The sound of her palm against my face still echoes in my memory. My daughter-in-law, Veronica, slapped me so hard that day, I felt my whole body jolt. In her other hand, she held a thick stack of papers and hissed through her teeth. "Sign them. Sign them now." Those papers were not simple forms. They were a trap, meant to strip me of everything my late husband and I built across a lifetime. $3 million in savings, investments, and the home where I raised my son. All of it, she wanted to claim as her own. I was 65, widowed, and still mourning the man I loved. My heart was already fragile. Yet in that single moment, humiliation, grief, and rage collided inside me. I looked at her and realized, this woman I once called daughter had turned into my greatest enemy. But here's what she didn't know. My husband, Robert, had left me a safeguard, a hidden key that would expose her greed and force my son to see the truth with his own eyes. She thought she had broken me. Instead, she gave me the fire I needed to fight back. My name is Eleanor Reed. I was born in 1959, and for most of my life, I thought I knew what it meant to be safe, loved, and respected. My husband, Robert, was my partner for more than 4 decades. He was careful with money, careful with me, and he never let a day pass without reminding me that I was cherished. When he died, half a year before this ordeal began, my world lost its rhythm. The house we shared became a museum of memories. His books still on the shelves, his pipe still faint in the air. Every corner whispered of him. I tried to live with dignity, but grief is a weight that presses hardest when the house grows quiet at night. My son, Mark, saw that loneliness and wanted to help. He believed his wife, Veronica, could be the support I needed. I believed it too. I let her into my home, into my daily routines, into my trust. That trust nearly cost me everything. Before I continue my story, allow me to speak to you, watching right now. I may not know your name or where you are in the world, but I know what it feels like to grow older and wonder if the people around you truly care. So let me say a prayer for you. May your body be strong, may your mind stay sharp, and may your nights be peaceful. If you are in your 60s, 70s, or 80s, may every sunrise remind you that you are not forgotten, you are not useless, and your worth cannot be measured in dollars or possessions. If your children or grandchildren have ever made you feel unwanted, may you find comfort in knowing that the Almighty still sees you, still protects you, and still has a plan for you. I also pray that no greedy hands ever reach for what is yours, that your golden years are filled with love, not betrayal. And if you carry sorrow, be it from widowhood, sickness, or loneliness, may it be lifted little by little, and may you find the strength to keep standing. Please subscribe to this channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your words remind me that I'm not alone, and they give me courage to keep sharing. After Robert's funeral, my days slowed into something heavy and unfamiliar. I had lived in the same house for decades, yet suddenly it felt foreign. Robert had designed it with his own hands, every corner reflecting his thoughtful mind. The staircase, wide and sturdy, was where he once carried Mark on his shoulders. The fireplace, with its little burn mark from a stray firework, carried the echo of summer nights filled with laughter. Even the kitchen bore his touch, the wide windows facing the morning sun, because he knew I loved to drink my coffee with the light streaming in. Now those same rooms mocked me with their silence. I found myself setting 2 plates at the table by force of habit, then quietly returning one to the cabinet. I still reached across the bed at night, expecting the warmth of his hand, only to find the sheets empty and cold. Sometimes I spoke out loud, forgetting there was no one to answer anymore. Jasper, our old gray cat, became my only audience, staring at me with eyes that seemed to question why I bothered. Robert had prepared well for me. He never wanted me to worry about money or my future. He put everything, our home, our savings, our investments, into a trust with my name secured. He used to say, "Eleanor, if anything happens to me, you'll have what you need. I don't ever want you to feel unprotected." He gave me security, but he could not give me companionship. That was the ache that deepened each passing day, the empty space where his presence used to be. It was a week after the funeral when Mark called. His voice was full of concern, though I could hear the strain underneath. "Mom, you can't stay there alone. Veronica and I will come by tomorrow." We'll make sure you're all right. I didn't resist. Truth be told, I wanted company. Loneliness is a cruel companion. I told myself it would be good to have young energy in the house again. The next day they arrived. Mark hugged me with the same warmth he had as a boy, though I felt a distance in him too. Veronica was brisk, full of determination. She embraced me firmly and said, "You look too thin. Don't you worry, we're going to get you sorted." Her words sounded practical, almost comforting at the time. At first, her presence felt like a blessing. She was endlessly helpful. She cleaned the pantry, something I had postponed for months. She helped me sort through Robert's clothes, a task that broke me into tears more than once. Each time she placed a glass of water in my hand and said firmly, "It's okay to cry, but don't drown in it. Let's keep going together." She cooked meals and insisted I eat more than toast and tea. "Mark's still learning to cook," she laughed, "but I can keep you fed." On Sundays, she and Mark brought me to their home for dinner. My son seemed relieved, happy that his wife had taken charge. For a while, I was grateful. Veronica's energy filled the emptiness, and Mark's smile reassured me that I wasn't alone. I told myself Robert would have approved. After all, what more could a husband want than for his widow to be cared for by family? Yet beneath my gratitude, grief still lingered. At night, when I returned to my quiet bed, tears came freely. I missed Robert's steady hand, his gentle humor, the way he always noticed when I was struggling. Veronica's help was practical, but it could not replace that. Still, I chose to believe in her kindness. I reminded myself that she was my daughter-in-law, that she was family, and that family is supposed to stand by each other. I accepted her assistance, even when pride made me hesitate. She took over the cooking, the organizing, even encouraged me to let her handle small household matters. At the time, I thought it was nothing more than love and concern. I told myself I was fortunate, that in a world where many widows are left completely alone, I had my son and his wife by my side. Looking back now, I realized this was the beginning of a shift. But in those early weeks, all I could see was the contrast between my deep loneliness and her bright, bustling energy. That was enough to make me let my guard down. I still remember one particular evening when the house smelled of fresh bread she had baked. She sat across from me and asked gently, "Do you take your medicine on time, Eleanor? You know it's important." I smiled at her concern. "Yes, dear, I do." She reached across the table, touched my hand, and said, "Good? We can't have you falling ill. You're too precious to us." At that moment, I believed her. I believed she truly cared. And so my gratitude grew. I let her into my routines, my trust, and even my private grief. I thought she was helping me heal. But what I didn't know then was that this kindness was not what it seemed. It was the first step in something far darker, though I could not see it yet. At first, I thought Veronica's help was simply practical. I told myself, she's just easing my burden. But slowly, her hand stretched into places I never intended her to reach. It started with the mail. One morning, I walked into the kitchen to find her sitting at the table with a neat stack of envelopes already opened. "No need for you to deal with all this, Eleanor," she said with a smile. "It's easier if I handle it." I hesitated, but she had already sorted them into piles: bills, bank statements, insurance notices. It seemed harmless, even thoughtful. Soon, she suggested putting all my payments on automatic withdrawal. "That way you won't have to remember dates," she explained. "Less stress for you." It sounded logical, and I agreed. After all, she was family. But as the weeks passed, I noticed small shifts. My checkbook disappeared from the drawer where I always kept it. Veronica brushed it off. "Oh, I tucked it somewhere safe, you don't need to worry." My bank statements stopped arriving. When I asked about them, she laughed lightly and said, "They all come online now. I've already printed copies." I told myself not to overthink it. She was organized. She was trying to help. Yet other things began to unsettle me. My phone would vanish, only to be found hours later in odd places. One afternoon, my friend Nancy called, asking why I hadn't returned her messages. I was confused. I hadn't seen any calls. Later, Veronica appeared holding my phone. Silly me. I left it charging in the guest room. "You really need to be more careful, Eleanor." She said it kindly, but something in her eyes made me uneasy. The pattern grew. Whenever I tried to call an old friend, Veronica would appear nearby, hovering, listening. Sometimes the calls dropped altogether, and when I asked why, she would sigh gently and say, "Technology can be tricky for you at your age." That line pierced me more than I admitted at the time. At your age. It was the first hint that she was painting me as someone weak, incapable, unreliable. The doctor visits confirmed it. I had been seeing Dr. Reynolds for over 20 years. He knew me well. But when Veronica started accompanying me, she would answer before I could. "She forgets her medicine sometimes," she'd say, smiling with false concern. "Her memory isn't as sharp as it used to be." I wanted to object, but the words stuck in my throat. I hadn't forgotten. I was careful. Robert always said I was the steady one. But in that office, with Veronica speaking for me, I felt small, as if my own voice had been taken away. Dr. Reynolds would glance at me, searching my face for confirmation, and I would force a weak smile, unable to explain. It was in these moments that I began to question myself. Was I truly slipping? Was grief clouding my mind more than I realized? Or was Veronica deliberately shaping a picture of me that wasn't true? I want to pause here and ask you, dear listener, have you ever trusted someone only to discover they were quietly tightening control over your life? Sometimes those closest to us carry hidden motives. They smile at us, call us family, while slowly taking pieces of our independence until we barely recognize ourselves. What would you do if you were in my place? Would you fight back immediately, or would you, like me, hold on to the hope that it was simply care, not manipulation? Tell me in the comments. I want to know how you would handle it. Her tone toward me changed as well. The gentle, helpful daughter-in-law grew impatient. If I asked a question about a bill, she would sigh as if I were wasting her time. If I took too long to get ready for a doctor's appointment, she would tap her foot loudly by the door. At night, I began to overhear fragments of her whispered phone calls with Mark. She spoke of timelines and not being able to wait. My stomach tightened every time I caught those words. My son seemed oblivious, or perhaps unwilling to see. He trusted her completely, and why wouldn't he? From his view, she was a devoted wife caring for his widowed mother. But I saw the cracks. They were small at first, but they grew. A misplaced phone. A missing statement. A doctor's note twisted into a story about my forgetfulness. The portrait she was painting of me was not of the woman I was, but of someone fragile, unreliable, even incompetent. It is hard to describe what it feels like when your own identity is slowly rewritten by another person. To the outside world, I was becoming a weak widow who couldn't manage her affairs. Inside, I knew the truth. I was still the same Eleanor who had raised a son, managed a household, and stood beside Robert in every challenge. And yet, the more I tried to protest, the more foolish I felt. She had a way of tilting her head, smiling kindly, and making me doubt myself. Looking back, this was the true beginning of her scheme. Not the slap, not the papers, but these small acts of control. Each one chipping away at my confidence, until the day she finally struck me and thought she could steal everything. It happened on an afternoon I will never forget. My 65th birthday was only a few days away, and the house felt unbearably quiet. I was sitting in the living room, staring at the piano Robert used to play, when I heard Veronica call my name sharply. "Eleanor." Her voice sliced through the silence. I looked up, startled. She entered the room holding a stack of papers. There was no warmth in her face this time. Her eyes were cold, her mouth set into a hard line. "What is it, dear?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't answer. Instead, she raised her hand and slapped me. The sound cracked across the room like a whip. For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. My cheek burned and tears filled my eyes, not just from pain, but from the shock of being struck in my own home by the woman I had trusted. Before I could gather my thoughts, she slammed the papers onto the coffee table. "Sign these," she hissed. "Sign them now." I blinked through the tears and stared at the title on the first page, Revocation of Trust and Power of Attorney. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. I whispered, "What is this?" Her voice was sharp, venom dripping from every word. "This is what you should have done months ago." You're not capable of handling things anymore. You'll sign these and I'll take care of everything. It's for your own good." I sat frozen, my hand pressed to my burning cheek. In that moment, I saw her for what she truly was, not a caring daughter-in-law, not a helper in my grief, but a predator circling her prey. Just then, the front door opened. Mark's footsteps echoed in the hallway. My heart surged with hope. My son was here. Surely he would see the red mark on my face, the tears in my eyes, the fury in his wife's expression. But as quickly as Veronica had shown me her true self, she changed again. In the space of a breath, her mask returned. Her voice trembled with false concern. Her shoulders slumped as if she carried the weight of my supposed frailty. "Mark, thank goodness you're here," she said, rushing toward him. "Your mother had another dizzy spell." She almost fell. I was trying to help her sign the insurance renewal papers when she collapsed into the chair. I opened my mouth to protest, to tell the truth, but the words died in my throat. My son's eyes darted between us, his wife's tearful performance and my panicked, tear-streaked face. He had been conditioned for months to believe her version of events, and now he saw only what she wanted him to see. "Mom," he said gently, kneeling beside me. "Are you all right? Did you fall?" I wanted to scream. "No," she slapped me. "Can't you see?" But the shame weighed me down like chains. I just shook my head, unable to speak. Veronica leaned against him, her voice trembling with feigned sadness. "She doesn't know what she's doing anymore, Mark. She's so disoriented. We have to take care of this before it's too late." The humiliation was unbearable. My own son stood inches away, yet he could not see the truth. I looked back at the papers. My hands shook as I reached for them. That's when I noticed something. The notary section at the bottom was missing the special identifier Robert had insisted on years earlier. He was always cautious, always thinking ahead. Our lawyer had created a unique safeguard to prevent forgery. And this paper didn't have it. I felt a flicker of strength in my chest. These documents were fake. Veronica mistook my hesitation for weakness. She pressed the papers closer. "Just sign them, Eleanor. It'll all be easier." But in that instant, a plan began forming in my mind. If I signed, I would lose everything. If I resisted openly, she would convince Mark that I was unstable. But if I pretended, if I played the part she wanted me to play, I might have a chance. I let the papers slip from my trembling hands and began to sob. "I don't understand," I wailed, my tears now both real and calculated. "It's all too much. I'm confused." Mark wrapped his arms around me, whispering, "It's okay, Mom. We'll handle everything." Veronica's face flickered for a moment, disappointment crossing her features. But she quickly masked it with a smile. "I'll put on some tea," she said, smoothing out the papers as though nothing had happened. From that day on, I played the role of the frail widow. I stumbled when I walked. I repeated myself in conversations. I pretended to forget my medicine. Veronica grew more relaxed, convinced she had broken me. She smiled whenever I made a mistake, believing victory was within her grasp. But each night, when the house was quiet, I worked in secret. I remembered the safe Robert had hidden behind the bookshelf in his study. He had told me the combination shortly before he passed, our wedding date intertwined with Mark's birthday. No one else knew. One night, while Veronica was out, I opened the safe. Inside were the original trust documents, intact and untouched. I flipped through each page, and relief washed over me. Robert's careful planning was there, protecting me even from the grave. That's when I found the most important detail of all, a clause buried deep within the trust. It stated that no transfer of assets could be valid without the presentation of a special item, something Robert had called the silver compass. I knew exactly what that was. On our 25th anniversary, Robert had given me a small silver locket shaped like a compass. He told me it was a gift with a secret meaning, though he never explained further. I had kept it in a velvet box in my jewelry drawer, never once opening it. Now I realized why. It was the key to securing everything he had left me. Veronica didn't know about the safe. She didn't know about the compass. She thought a forged signature would be enough to seize my estate. She had no idea Robert had built a wall she could never cross. I tucked the documents back into the safe and returned the compass to its hiding place. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of hope. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a strategist. I would let her believe she had me in her grasp. I would play the role of the fragile widow until the moment came to reveal the truth. It was humiliating to pretend, to act like I was slipping away while she smirked in victory. But I told myself, patience, Eleanor. Wait for the right moment. The slap had left its mark, not only on my cheek but on my spirit. Yet it also awakened something inside me, a quiet fire I hadn't felt in years. She thought she had broken me. She thought she had won. But she had only taught me how to fight. From the moment Veronica struck me, I knew my only chance of survival was to play along. If she believed I was weak, she would loosen her guard. If she thought I was losing my memory, she would make mistakes. And so, I became the woman she wanted me to be. Frail, forgetful, and dependent. Each morning, I forgot where I put my pills, fumbling with the bottles until she sighed and handed them to me. Sometimes I stumbled on purpose, clutching the wall for support. I even pretended not to recognize familiar names when she spoke to me. The more I performed, the more confident she became. She would smirk quietly whenever I misplaced something, certain that her story about my decline was coming true. But inside, I was sharper than ever. Every night, I sat at Robert's desk, reading and rereading the trust documents from the safe. My tears blurred the pages sometimes, but my resolve grew stronger. Veronica thought she was weaving a trap. What she didn't know was that Robert had already prepared a defense she could never bypass. My chance to reach for help came unexpectedly during a doctor's appointment. Veronica always insisted on joining me, answering for me, dismissing my words. But one day, she claimed she had a meeting and couldn't attend. For the first time in months, I walked into Dr. Reynolds' office without her shadow hovering over me. As he led me into the examination room, I purposely dropped my purse. My glasses, wallet, and coins scattered across the floor. "Oh dear," I muttered, bending down slowly. He knelt to help me gather my things. In that brief moment, I slipped a folded note into his hand. "Please read it later," I whispered, looking him straight in the eyes. He paused, confusion flashing across his face, but he tucked it into his coat pocket. I prayed silently he would not dismiss it as the ramblings of a grieving widow. The rest of the appointment blurred. My blood pressure was high, my body weakened by stress, but my mind clung to hope. Would he call? Would he believe me? 2 mornings later, the doorbell rang. Veronica hurried to answer, her steps quick and sharp. When she opened it, a uniformed officer stood outside. My heart nearly leapt out of my chest. "Good morning," the officer said gently. "We received a call about Ms. Reed's welfare." An anonymous tip. I knew instantly. It was Dr. Reynolds. He had believed me. Veronica plastered on her sweetest smile. "She's perfectly fine," she said, gesturing toward me. "We were just enjoying a quiet morning." The officer's eyes shifted to me. "Ma'am, are you all right?" I wanted to cry out the truth, but fear tightened my throat. If I accused Veronica outright, she would twist it, claim I was confused again. So instead, I forced a weak smile. "Yes, officer. My daughter-in-law takes very good care of me." The officer's gaze lingered on me, searching for something. Finally, she handed me a small card. "If you ever need us, call this number directly." When the door closed, Veronica's face hardened. She turned on me, her voice a hiss. "Who called them? Did you say something?" I shook my head, playing the part she expected. "I don't know, dear. Maybe a neighbor worried." Her eyes narrowed, but she dismissed it. She stormed off, muttering under her breath. The moment she left for the bank later that day, I rushed to Robert's study. My hands trembled as I turned the hidden knob on the bookshelf, revealing the safe once again. I pulled out the thick folder of trust documents and sat at his desk. It was then that I noticed a clause buried deep within the pages, something I hadn't fully understood before. My breath caught as I read it over and over. "The transfer of all assets and properties of this trust shall be invalid unless the beneficiary of the first order, Eleanor Reed, presents the authentic silver compass document to the trust's attorney and the bank manager of the First National Bank." The silver compass. I gasped. Robert had given me a silver locket shaped like a compass on our 25th anniversary. I had never opened it, keeping it tucked away in a velvet box in my jewelry drawer. At the time, he had smiled and said, "One day, this will guide you when you're lost." I thought it was simply sentimental. Now I understood it was the key to protecting everything. I hurried to my bedroom and opened the jewelry box. Inside lay the small velvet case. My hands shook as I opened it, revealing the silver locket, still gleaming after all these years. I held it in my palm, my heart racing. Robert had planned for this. Somehow, he had known that one day someone might try to rob me of what we built. He had left me not only security but a weapon against betrayal. I sat there for a long time, clutching the compass, tears streaming down my face. "You knew, Robert," I whispered. "You knew she would try." The weight of the locket in my hand felt heavier than gold. It was more than jewelry. It was my shield, my proof, my salvation. That night, I lay in bed and replayed everything. The slap, the fake papers, the lies Veronica told my son. For months, I had been humiliated, silenced, cornered. But now, with the compass in my possession, I had the power to turn the game around. Still, I couldn't reveal it yet. If I showed my hand too early, Veronica would fight harder, perhaps even destroy the compass. No, I had to bide my time. I had to let her think she was winning, let her believe I was too weak to resist. I began to prepare my next step. I needed someone outside the house to know the truth. Not just Dr. Reynolds, who had already risked himself for me, but someone who could protect me legally. My thoughts turned to Peter Evans, our family lawyer, the man who had helped Robert draft the trust. He had been Robert's friend for decades. If anyone could help me execute my plan, it was him. But first, I had to keep my secret safe. Each day, I continued my act. I stumbled, I forgot, I let Veronica laugh under her breath when I misplaced my phone. She grew smug, whispering to Mark at night that I was slipping further into confusion. What she didn't know was that I spent those same nights studying the trust, memorizing every word. I kept the compass hidden in my pocket, feeling its weight whenever doubt crept in. It reminded me that Robert was still with me, guiding me from beyond the grave. I want to pause here to tell you, dear listener, that sometimes the ones we trust most are the very people who work against us. Have you ever felt that way? Like someone close to you is quietly stripping away your dignity? If you have, know this, you are not powerless. Even in the darkest corner, there is always a way to fight back. Veronica thought she had me trapped. She thought the slap had broken me. What she could never imagine was that Robert had left me a gift she would never touch, a secret key that would expose her greed. I was no longer the grieving widow she believed I was. I was a woman with a plan. I woke early that morning with the compass in my pocket and a storm in my chest. The act of weakness I had worn for weeks would end today. I had an appointment at the bank, arranged quietly through Peter Evans, Robert's old friend and the lawyer who had drafted the trust. I had slipped a note to his office with the help of Dr. Reynolds, asking for a private meeting. When I entered Peter's office at First National, I felt Robert's presence in the room. The walls smelled faintly of leather and polished wood, and the desk where Peter sat was the same desk where Robert had signed our will years ago. Peter looked up, his face etched with both relief and concern. "Eleanor," he said softly, rising to shake my hand. "I had a feeling you'd come. Tell me everything." I laid out the forged documents, the slap, the lies, the humiliations. His jaw tightened with every word. When I pulled the compass from my purse and placed it on his desk, his eyes widened. "She has no idea you have this, does she?" he asked. "No," I whispered. "And she must never find out until the time is right." Peter leaned back, exhaling. Robert was wise. This clause makes any forgery worthless. With the compass, you're untouchable. But, Eleanor, this isn't just about documents. You need protection. He helped me secure my estate with the bank manager that same hour. Together, they verified the compass, confirmed the original trust, and locked my estate behind new safeguards. Peter also arranged a withdrawal for me, enough funds to support myself should I need to walk out of my house and never return. As I walked out of the bank, clutching the envelope of funds, I felt my strength rise again. For the first time in months, I wasn't trapped. I was prepared. When I returned home, the air felt thick. Mark was sitting in the living room, his face tense. Veronica paced like a caged animal, her arms folded tight. "Where have you been?" she demanded. Her voice was laced with suspicion. "At the pharmacy," I replied calmly, lowering my purse onto the chair. My act of frailty had slipped away. I spoke with steady authority, and she noticed it instantly. Her eyes narrowed. "You're lying." Mark turned to me, frustration in his voice. "Mom, you can't keep disappearing without telling us." Veronica's worried sick. I almost laughed at the irony, but I held my tongue. "I'm not the one you need to worry about," I said quietly. Mark frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Veronica stepped forward, waving a stack of papers. "It means she's confused again. Mark, I tried to get her to sign these for her own protection, but she refuses. She doesn't know what's best for herself anymore." I looked at her squarely, my heart no longer trembling. "Those papers are forged." The room froze. Mark's eyes flicked between us, uncertainty clouding his face. Veronica let out a sharp laugh. "Forged? Really? That's absurd." I reached into my purse and drew out the compass. Its silver face gleamed under the light. I placed it on the table between us. "This," I said firmly, "is the safeguard Robert left me. No transfer, no revocation, no signature is valid without it." "You didn't know, did you, Veronica? You thought you could trick me. You thought you could trick my son." For a moment, silence pressed down on the room. Then Veronica's mask cracked. Rage twisted her features, and her voice rose into a shriek. "You old witch! You've been plotting against me this whole time." Mark flinched, staring at her as though he'd never seen her before. "Veronica, what are you saying?" She turned to him, desperation replacing fury. "She's lying, Mark. Can't you see? She's manipulating you, just like she's manipulating everyone else. She wants to cut us out." I stood tall, my voice clear. "No, Mark. She has been lying to you. She struck me. She hid my phone. She cut me off from my friends. She made you believe I was losing my mind. And now she tried to steal what your father built for us." Mark's face was pale, his eyes darting between his wife's rage and my calm certainty. For months he had seen me as fragile. Now he saw me standing firm, holding the very key Robert had left to protect us. Veronica lunged for the compass, but I snatched it back, holding it close. "You will never touch this," I said coldly. Mark grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Did you forge those papers?" She faltered, her words tumbling in half sentences. I only wanted. It was for us. She's too old to." The truth was written all over her face. Mark's shoulders slumped, the weight of realization crashing down on him. "You've been lying to me," he whispered. She tried again, tears streaming now. "Mark, please, you have to believe me. I did it for us, for our future." But he shook his head slowly, his eyes filled with a pain I had never seen before. He turned toward me, then back to her, caught in the cruelest choice of his life. I stepped closer, my voice steady but firm. "Mark, this is the moment. You must choose. Who do you believe, your wife who deceived you, or your mother who has always stood by you?" The room seemed to hold its breath. Veronica sobbed, clutching his arm. I waited, the compass clutched in my hand, Robert's voice echoing in my memory. "This will guide you when you're lost." Mark closed his eyes, then slowly pulled his arm away from Veronica. "Mother," he said quietly, "I believe you." The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. Veronica gasped, her face twisting with fury and heartbreak. She staggered back, her voice breaking into incoherent shouts. I felt tears rise in my eyes, not of weakness but of vindication. For months, I had been painted as fragile, delusional, powerless. Now the truth stood bare, and my son finally saw me as I truly was. I turn to you, dear listener, and I must ask, if you were in Mark's shoes, who would you have believed, your spouse or your mother? Tell me in the comments. The moment Mark stepped away from Veronica, the last of her performances collapsed. Her sobs turned to screams, her pleas twisted into threats. She clutched at him, insisting I was manipulating him, that I had orchestrated everything to drive us apart. But her words no longer held power. "Enough," Mark said firmly, his voice shaking with both anger and heartbreak. He pulled out his phone and dialed. "It's over, Veronica. I'm calling the police." Her eyes widened, her face drained of color. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed. But within minutes, 2 officers arrived at the door. Veronica tried to charm them at first, insisting it was a family misunderstanding. She even held her hands out like a victim. But when I placed the forged papers in their hands, papers she had pushed me to sign, and showed them the compass alongside Robert's trust, the truth became undeniable. Mark's voice cracked as he explained what he had witnessed, how his wife had turned from caretaker to manipulator. I saw the officers exchange a knowing glance. One of them turned to Veronica and read her rights. She lashed out one last time, cursing me, cursing the day she married into our family. But her words fell flat as they led her out the door in handcuffs. The slam of that door was the sound of her scheme collapsing. When silence returned, Mark stood in the middle of the living room, his face pale and his hands trembling. He looked at me, shame heavy in his eyes. "Mom, I don't know what to say. I let her blind me. I let her treat you this way." I reached out and held his hand. "You see the truth now, son? That's what matters." My voice was steady, though my heart ached. "Your father knew this might happen. He tried to protect me, and he did. And today you chose to believe me. That's all I will remember." He broke down then, tears streaming, his forehead pressed to my hand. In that moment, I forgave him. Not because I had forgotten the pain, but because holding on to it would have only chained me to the bitterness Veronica left behind. That night, after Mark left, I sat alone with the compass in my palm. I thought of Robert, the man who had loved me, who had seen the possibility of betrayal even before I did. He had built a safeguard not just for our estate, but for my dignity. In every line of that trust, in every detail of that clause, I could feel his devotion reaching across the years, protecting me when I needed it most. I whispered into the quiet room, "You saved me again, Robert." The betrayal cut deep, but it taught me something I want to leave with you, my dear friend listening now. Greed can poison even the closest bonds. It can turn a smile into a mask, a hand of help into a hand of harm. But patience, truth, and resilience, those are the weapons that restore dignity when others try to strip it away. I know some of you watching have felt the sting of betrayal, perhaps by a child, a spouse, or a trusted friend. Perhaps you sit alone right now, wondering why those you cared for turned against you. If that is your story, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not broken, and you are not powerless. Let me offer a prayer for you again. Heavenly Father, I lift up every viewer or listener whose heart has been scarred by betrayal. For the widows who sit in quiet houses, missing the voices that once filled them, may you comfort their loneliness. For the elders whose children or in-laws mistreat them, may you grant them justice, strength, and peace. For those battling sickness or sorrow in their later years, may you renew their health and calm their nights. And for all who feel forgotten, remind them they are still seen, still loved, and still guided by your hand. I pray that no one watching this will ever be stripped of their dignity, that every act of greed against them will crumble into dust, and that their final years will shine with joy, not tears. Amen. As I close my story, I leave you with this truth. Money can build houses, but it cannot build love. Possessions can be stolen, but character cannot. Veronica tried to rob me of both, but in the end, she lost everything. And I kept not only my estate but my dignity. So hold fast to patience. Speak truth even when no one believes you. And remember, sometimes the justice we wait for comes slowly, but it always arrives. Thank you for walking with me through my story. It has been painful to tell, but I hope it brings courage to you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. And in the comments, tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your story too.